Hi, everyone. This is Dan Patella with XE.com. I'm Enterprise Sales Director here based down in Austin, Texas. I know we're going to have quite a few folks from Canada on the call, but here in the US, we currently have some family members flying in right now for the Thanksgiving holiday. So happy to speak to you guys before we go take a few days off. But I'm excited to jump into it. So this segment is going to be around embedded global payments within Sage Intacct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with giving a little bit of context and background on XE and who we are, and then get into the technology that we have built alongside BTerral. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with BTerral and their product Smart EFT, among others, and they've really been instrumental in helping us build this technology and get this out to the masses to simplify making global payments within Intacct. So, as a little background about XE.com, we are owned by Euronet, which, funny enough, is not a European-based company. It's a publicly traded company based in Kansas here in the States. And you can see our suite of family brands underneath Euronet here on the screen with Rhea and Dandelion here side by side with XE, ePay on the right, and Ren. So a kind of full suite between money transfer, cash pickup, as well as ATM services. And on the left-hand side just gives you an idea of our reach and our size, processing $125 billion last year with a market cap of $5.5 billion. So been around for 30 years and now really excited to be adding value in the embedded payment space. But you may be familiar with us from a few different areas. Our website, you see here, gets over 1 billion page views per year. Our mobile app, 8 million installs on an annual basis, and the currency data API, which provides live rates of exchange and daily rates of exchange just as a point of reference, and it's compatible with many different technologies. So currency data API is one of our most popular offerings. Now, to kind of get into what we're here to talk about today, why did we work with BTerral to build this technology? And the reason is we found that AP teams are spending up to 25% of their week managing vendor payments and accounts. Not necessarily what they want to be spending their time doing or what they're paid to do for a quarter of the week, but this is the fact of the matter. So, here, I believe we do have a polling question. But what this does, this slide, is showing you the standard Sage Intacct payment process, say for paying international vendors or global cross-border vendors, as opposed to what we have built within Intacct. So the legacy process is kind of creating that payment journal, exporting that bank file, then the bank needing to validate errors, report on any errors. Then the user has to then amend the payment file, fix the errors, back to the bank, over to process the payments and try to get them out to the vendor that needs to be paid. Then once the payment's delivered, back to Sage in order to post the payment. And the bank then needs to report on the FX gain or loss and that adjusted FX rate. So as you can see, a bit of a ping pong back and forth here. So what we've done is we've been able to create a technology that keeps this all within Intacct. So preparing a payment journal, instantly validating bank details. XE in the background, being a payments company, is able to validate IBAN, account number, checking account, whatever is necessary based on the country and the currency that's being paid, instantly validate that, offer a live rate of exchange, which you can execute on, which you'll see in a few moments, send and post the payment, and report on your FX gain and loss without having to deal with any sort of file upload, file download with the bank, and just managing this all in one system on Intacct. And here is just a kind of high level value adds, the embedded payments, the instant validation, and the automated reporting. So these are the three pieces that we feel are the biggest value adds in adopting this process and paying global vendors as opposed to the bank. So I like this slide because it just, I think, shows the simplicity with Sage Intacct and XE's payment engine. You have Sage, quite literally able to pay with XE within the portal. So think of us as acting as the bank in this scenario, and you're able to easily have access to over 120 currencies that reach over 200 countries and territories. So here, I believe we do have another polling question, final one of the day, but I want to get into some screenshots of the platform. I know that most of you are already familiar with Intacct, but I want to kind of show the added functionality of the XE feature and the XE module. So here, I have an example, I being a US business paying a Canadian vendor. So I have my Canadian dollars as my transaction currency. I have my base currency as USD, and an indicative exchange rate is applied right here. Not going to be the exchange rate that I'm executing at. You'll see that later, but an indicative exchange rate. On the bottom portion, we have our entry, so the account that's going to reflect on the GL. We have our amount, so 8,000 Canadian dollars, again, indicative price costing 5,832 US dollars. And this is all configurable, but here we have a requirement for a department and a location. So say this is a marketing cost and the location is USA 1, being a US business. So now what I'm going to do is work towards adding this bill to the outbox. So the vendor that I have set up in the system here is Acme CA. So I'm applying a few simple filters. Acme CA is my vendor. Bill currency being Canadian dollar, again, Canadian vendor from the US. And I'm adding in my bank account, which is the bank account that I'm going to be paying out of. So in this case, I have a XE clearing USD account set up that will fund the transaction. And note here, I know this is one transaction being one US dollar CAD, but we can have in one batch multi-currency payments. So I can be a US business and be making payments to Canadian vendors, European vendors, UK vendors, all in one pay run. So I'm going to go ahead and I would have selected this payment to add to the outbox. Now here comes the fun part in the XE application. So after install, and install is pretty seamless. It really can be done overnight, but you'll have an XE function or module in Intacct, and transactions here and sync and post are going to be two areas that you'll likely be living in to find value in the application. Transactions is going to manage all things payments. Sync and post will show you towards the end to kind of reconcile those transactions. So get into the XE application, and here we're adding the bill or the batch that we've already set up on the XE module. So again, using some filters, the bank account was our XE clearing USD account. Our payment currency was CAD. So we apply those filters, and we can see here that the Acme CA vendor of 8,000 CAD is there for us to go ahead and add. Now, this is an important part here, the approval process. So typically what we see is maybe an accounts payable team and maybe a controller. It depends on, of course, the size and structure of the organization, but is able to add transactions, and then maybe a CFO, a CEO, a VP of Treasury or Finance comes in and gets a second set of eyes on that and approves the transaction. So you see in the top frame that the payment will be sitting in waiting approval until, again, the necessary people come in and approve the transaction. And I also did put a second frame here on the bottom to show you what the approver will see. So kind of a recap of all facets of the transaction and details that are involved. So after that's approved, then we're going to work towards getting a live, quote, live rate of exchange, as I had mentioned earlier. So you see the quote button on the top right here, and then an API connection is being created to hit XE, as we are a payments company, and that's what we were built on, to return a live rate of exchange in one of the many currencies that we would offer. And also a quick note, you'll see on that sort of top right, next to save and quote, log out XE. So you would have an XE account that is approved and logged into within Intacct that sits underneath the environment. So once that quote is returned, then there is another set of approval because we're going to hold that rate of exchange for 60 seconds. As you probably know, FX market's always moving, so we want you to have the most up-to-date rate of exchange. So we're going to hold that for 60 seconds, and if everything looks good here, looks like we have an 8,000 CAD for 5861 USD with a quoted rate of 136.49 for this given transaction. Then it's really as simple as clicking agree to terms and approve, and that is as simple as initiating a transaction is with XE Global Business Payments and Intacct. So after all of that, there is one step remaining, and it's the sync and post, right? So this is where we're really trying to make accounting personnel's lives easier. So after the payment has been contractual and the funds have been sent out via XE to the international vendor, then you're able to go ahead and post that transaction. So you'll see a few different green shoots here: status completed, status posted, and XE status sent. So rather than having to go get the rate of exchange from a bank and bring that back over to Intacct and try to calculate the gain and loss, this is all done for you within the Intacct environment. So with that, those are the main points that I wanted to cover here for XE Global Business Payments. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I can read the question for you. And what does the implementation roadmap look like?
Yeah, the implementation roadmap is really easy. So typically what we'll see is clients will go into Sandbox, and we can install the Sandbox just overnight. And then kind of configure some vendors and some permissions and roles, which takes about an hour or 2 hours. And then go ahead and test in Sandbox as you wish. So typically, I mean, it depends on sort of the scale of the organization, the amount of users, the amount of vendors, but we'll see about a week or two of testing. And then when we're ready to go into production, again, we can get that installed overnight, and we're ready to go the following day with maybe another 1 hour conversation around some additional configurations. So it's very straightforward.
Thank you. There is another question for you. And what type of support do I receive once I am live on the platform?
Yeah, good question. So the support, as I mentioned earlier, you'll receive an XE account that's approved with us, right? So while you're living in Sage, you have an XE account, which means you'll have an XE account manager. So anything that you need, whether it's a question about, I don't know, setting up a vendor, or maybe it's when a payment is expected to arrive to a vendor, or a rate of exchange, whatever the question might be, you're going to have an account manager based here in North America. We have teams both in the US as well as Canada that will be there for you to answer any sort of questions that you might have. And from a technical perspective, as I had discussed earlier, we are partnered with BTerral, so they also help support from the tech side.